invested at Lightspeed. And one of the pieces we were doing was offline retail. Lightspeed had investments in China and US in related companies. And that opportunity around offline retail was too big for us to not focus on that. And as I spent more time around that, spent some time in China looking at everything that's happening, I was just too excited to say, instead of looking for an opportunity to invest, I'd rather be on the other side and help build up this offline retail ecosystem marketing platform. That's how Magicpin started. At the heart of what Magicpin is, we're a data and technology company. Our idea is that if we know users well, we would be able to match them to the right offline retailers who are looking for these users to come to restaurants. Retail is a $1 trillion market, and 90% of this market is offline. And the consumers, however, are now 100% online. They consume content online, but when it comes to spending, they go offline and spend. And the retailer ecosystem in our country, and there are millions of them, they're not going to come online and do CPC, CPM campaigns to get users to come to their stores. And that's where Magicpin comes in. We bring the local markets alive on the users' smartphones. This is across categories. Basically, every time a user is looking to step out of their homes, we would help them discover everything around them and give them savings on that. There's a very strong belief that what we are building for India's retail ecosystem is needed, it's possible, and we are the best ones to be able to go and accomplish that.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've had the privilege of knowing Magicpin since inception and knowing Manish even before that. And it's great to be here. And not just be here, be able to build something together, which is magic. I'll start by, in fact, a lot of what I want to say I've said now on the video and between what Manish was saying. But I'll just reiterate this point that the retail markets in India, it's a massive market. It is consumed offline, and there needs to be a starting point in the online world that we are living in, where the discovery of that starts where the consumer is, which is in India, at least on their phone. The online world has benefited a lot, right? You go and look at a Gillette razor on Amazon, that product will follow you wherever you go on the internet. They would remarket you after 3 days, after 7 days. They'll keep coming back. So think about the offline retailer in our country. The offline retailer doesn't have that choice. The offline retailer is being hit by a number of options, which are from payments, procurement, credit, but there's nothing and no one who's coming to him and saying that I'll help you grow your business. And that's really the big opportunity. That's really where 90% of the consumption happens. And while so much of investment has gone into building the online retail ecosystem, offline where most of this is happening, they need to be brought online to where the users are to their phones. And that is what Magicpin does. We bring the local markets alive onto the users' phones, and we do this across categories. We do this on a category like fashion apparel, a large organized store like a Shoppers Stop, a Westside, or a small store which is Naran Garment, which is not small by the way in its own self in that micro market, but also a small mom and pop QSR joint, a nightlife place, beauty, salon, electronics, entertainment. Every time you're looking to go outside and you're spending your money, there can be a starting point. There needs to be a starting point for that on your phone, in the online world. Retailers want to be there. They don't want to miss out on the opportunity to let their customers go to other perhaps places, which might be purely online as well, and some of that is going to happen. But they do not have to wait to do that. Today what will happen is, if the retailer thinks about an Instagram or they think about Facebook or think about Google, they would do a campaign because they have a need to market, but eventually that campaign is not going to give them any online all the way to offline results, and as a result, their willingness to spend more. And I'm still, all the examples I gave you, they are very lifestyle oriented because that's where most of the discovery part sits. But if I now start to go towards more categories which are offline, think about a high ticket but a low frequency but still a high margin category, like a furniture, a jewelry shop, an optician, just so many of these retailers who would not know how exactly they can participate in this fast growing online ecosystem in the country. And that's really the problem we're solving. There have been attempts around this in different parts of the world. And before we started in India, there were more attempts there also, but they were very Groupon-like models. And those models do not work. When we started, and it's become even more true since we've started, is that now there is immense amount of data available around users and their consumption behavior, which lets us map the right online user to the right offline user. So I'll talk about four things as I go through this. I spoke about the problem statement that we are solving. I'll speak a little bit about our unit as we speak about in the venture ecosystem, the right unit and the unit economics of it. I'll thirdly speak about where we stand today as a business in terms of our overall P&L, what have we done in the last couple of years, what we're looking to do. And finally, I'll spend a little bit of time on ONDC, which by itself is also a very transformative project which has been taken up by the government of India. And we've had a key role to play in what that project could also unleash as more and more of India gets digitized through DPIs, digital platforms which are built by the government for everyone to use versus just a single platform. So this is the rough scale that we are at before I go into the unit itself. We would roughly be driving on a run rate basis around $300 million of GMV. That's the amount our users would go and spend at our partners. Our business model is straightforward that if we spend, if a user spends 100 rupees on a partner, we get to keep around 20% as our take rate. The $60 million that we see is our take rate. On this, we would get to keep some margin and we'd have to give some. We get to give to the customer an incentive to transact by us. It might be fulfillment cost if it's an omni-channel online delivery, or it might be a discount or an incentive at the store itself. So we would roughly operate at around 40% contribution margin in the business. Now that you know this, let me take you to the heart of what a consumer journey would feel like. To a merchant, so there are two stakeholders in our business. There's a consumer and there's a merchant. The merchant is, in fact, the primary stakeholder. The merchant is there because the consumer is there. So, of course, we need to take care of the consumer. But we are a merchant-led business. And it's very important to understand that we're trying to bring this merchant online. And part of it is SaaS-like. We'd get their content up, we would negotiate contracts with them, where our take rates are defined. We would catalog them, get their products, their pictures, images, prices online. And finally, we would enable delivery for some of these products, right? So it's a full stack. And we would start merchants at the bottom where we would have 5 million merchants, but then we just keep taking them up. And as we are working with our partners, this slide might be too small to see, but I'll describe what it shows, is that if you search on Magicpin for a white linen shirt, something as specific as that, you would be able to show you merchants around you where these products are available. So you can browse it like an e-commerce platform, and then when you eventually go to the store, you pay with Magicpin, and when you do that, if it's a 5,000 rupees spend that you did, you might be able to save up to 10% on that. So you save 500 rupees on that product. It's a win for the customer because the customer now has a choice not just to discover what's selling online, but to understand what's selling offline, A, and B, be able to save on that transaction. It's a win for the merchant because the merchant now can get their relevant customers to start to come to their store, which otherwise, like this customer might have shopped online, or this customer might have gone to the store they already know. A new store which is available, which is trying to run more product, would not get discovered. And the interesting part about what we do is that the merchant pays if and when the customer comes to their store. So if the customer goes to the store but doesn't pay via Magicpin, that too can happen. then in that case we would not get the take rate from the merchant. So the merchant to that extent has got nothing to lose. And when you think about it that way, that's a win-win. We heard Anshoo speak about the Indian customer and how frugal, and then Anshoo summarized by saying that they are unwilling to pay. I think there's a reality to that, which is to say they're very value conscious. And now if you think of the merchant is probably 10x more value conscious. And I knew this in my prior role being an investor before starting a company, that it's hard to get a merchant to pay. And if you're going to invoice a small merchant, it's not worth the paper you write that invoice on. So in our case, what we learned, and sometimes some of these learnings are had the hard way, we would first collect the money from the customer, we'll deduct our commission, and then we'll pay the merchant. The moment you do that, now the merchant has newfound respect for you. You are a source of revenue where the money is flowing via you, and that resolves the conflict around invoicing, collection. It, however, requires us to be not just a discovery platform, but also a payments company to that extent, because the money is flowing via us. But gives us so much more insights, the ability to upsell a merchant onto subsequent products because the money continues to flow via us. I'll talk about some of those pieces around the unit. Just a few glimpses around how Magicpin looks like in the market. You might have, if you from some of the metros, our business is largely in the top 15 cities in the country. But if you've seen us, you would be seen at store where the merchants would be showing our signages. In many of these cases, the way, if you ask the merchant what we do for them, they'd say we drive business to them. So the footfall that we drive to them is the heart of it. They would refer to Magicpin being able to uncover new user segments that they've never had in the past. And in many cases, we'd get to the point as we become dense in a market, we would be accounting for even up to 20% of the merchant sale. And that for us is also a balance. We don't want to go too much beyond that. But when that starts to happen, the merchant sees Magicpin as a red button on their phone, think of it that way. Every time they press the button, they would get footfall. And it's up to them how long they want to press it for, because there'd be a fee that we charge them for every business unit that we deliver to them. But how we price that button is up to us. So that's the problem statement, how deep this problem is, there are no other solutions, and how we've managed to build a system which drives business to the offline, massive offline retail ecosystem in the country. I'll talk a little bit about, maybe just before I move to our unit economics, that another hidden gem in this ecosystem is the staff at this merchant. Often just ignored. But if you think about this massive retailer ecosystem, there is the main decision maker, but there are also millions of people that get employed in the retail industry. Like if you think of the workforce, that might be like 6 to 7% of India's workforce is employed in the retail ecosystem. And what we've done for them is build a rewards program for them as they provide a great experience to our customers and their own customers around welfare, recognition, making them a part of the community becomes something which is very integral to our own existence. So there is the user and there is the merchant, but then there's also the staff who's a key constituent in being able to provide a high quality product or service experience to the merchant. For the next couple of minutes, I'll cover our business model. This is simpler. So these are numbers around how our business works. I spoke that we get 20% if 100 rupees spend happens. Of that 20%, we end up passing on up to 12% as subsidized cost of fulfillment or an incentive such that the customer has value in transacting via us. We get to keep around 40% of this 20%. And so if you think of that overall, around 8% of the full GMV as what is economics that comes to management. That's our contribution margin of running the business. The heart of this contribution margin, so this is a simple enough slide, but I'll explain how it goes. So we operate in some 6,500 localities in India. A locality is roughly a 2-kilometer radius area, like MG Road, Brigade Road is going to be a locality. What this chart does is that it takes our 6,000 localities and puts them across these columns. On the leftmost side, we have the least dense locality, which has 300 or less users transacting. On the highest end, we'd have localities which would have up to 20, 30,000 users transacting in that market in a month. And what happens as you go from left to right in our business is that by definition there are more users in that locality. Second, the blue bars that you see, there's a lot more revenue per user because we are generating many more options for our users to go and transact. And that's shown in terms of the number of paying merchants in that business. So we have a flywheel which at one end has merchants, at other end has users. So the heart of our business is getting density. Getting a lot of merchants in, getting a lot of users in, which is a virtuous cycle which leads to more merchants, to more users, and so on. And what that shows here is that the revenue per user goes up, the pink line at the top shows our contribution margin goes up, and the teal line underneath that shows that not just our contribution margin, our locality EBITDA, if you were to call it, that also goes up. So if you look at this, we have in our densest locality, we operate at around 18% locality EBITDA. And then as we keep going from right to left, that teal line keeps going down, but it continues to be positive even in our starting locality. So getting this density model right is what has got us to the point where we can now predict that as localities become dense, they'll become more profitable, they'll throw off cash which we can then go back and invest as the first creating more units. I'll come back to how this whole thing adds up, but now the same locality, if I take all of these localities and put them on a timeline over the last 18 months, spread out over 8 months or so, on the x-axis I have number of transacting users in the locality, and on the y-axis I have the revenue per user. And the size of the bubble is the size of the locality. For example, sector 29 in Gurgaon, which is this purplish color, and you can see how it's grown in the last 18 months from being such a small dot to going more to the right and further up. More merchants, as a result, more users, as a result, more revenue per user. So moving up and to the right. And as they move up and to the right, what we saw on the previous slide, they also become profitable. So our business is to become more and more dense. And what's probably not very obvious in this slide, but I know in the business, is that what goes to the right actually breaks up. Because that virtuous cycle starts to kick in, where what happens is that we start to become the entry point into the market. And once that market starts to be driven by Magicpin, where people start to use Magicpin to say, this is what you can shop here, more merchants start to come onto the platform. I think big time's up. So I'll overshoot by 2 more minutes and I'll finish this in the internet. That what we've been able to do as we've got this model right in the last 2 years is that in the last 8 quarters, we've doubled twice. So we are 4x up on our revenue. And at the same time, our contribution margin profile has also gone up. And at the same time, because the economics of the business makes sense, our burn has become half again twice. So it's a quarter of the burn, but 4x of the scale. And our goal for this year is to say, let's double one more time. From this December to the December 24. Let's get this 2x. And as we do that, the business is generating the operating leverage now, which lets us get to the point that we can break even. And that, in my mind, is the point where we can go out and have very strong data and substantial amount of fundamentals to say we have leadership in a massive offline market in a country like India. It's a hard business to build, but we've been able to build it. The economics in this business world, in spite of all of India's consciousness around being able to pay, but when you provide the right value, the merchant is willing to pay, the customer is willing to pay more, and it's growing fast, and it's just starting in terms of where all it's going to. I don't have time for ONDC, but I'll just show one interesting thing on ONDC perhaps. And this is an interesting flow diagram, so I'll just walk through that. ONDC's idea broadly is to say, whatever merchants we have on the platform, you put them on the network, and someone on the other side, which is known as a buyer app, which could be an Ola, a Paytm, someone like a PhonePe, now Tata Digital, anyone in that ecosystem can generate orders for those merchants. For us, it was great. We said, fine, this is business on APIs. We would market Magicpin to our 10 million customers, but yeah, sure, if there are 100 million more customers we can reach to via ONDC, why would we not? So we launched it, and we played a key role in being able to scale up that market to get up to, in the business we do, up to 50,000 orders in a single day. But the interesting part is how it unbundles the entire ecosystem. Someone like Ola's customer can place an order on Ola. We provide them the technology because it's a very intricate flow. For them to build it might take time. So we provide them a SaaS solution, a Shopify-like solution, where they'll pass on that order to us. That order, once it's generated, they discover what they want to buy and place the order. It goes back to Ola's payment checkout, which is Ola Money, comes back via ONDC to Magicpin. Magicpin runs a logistics network where we are tied up with Dando, Shadowfax, Rapido, Loadshare, and that's an independent service now that we run. We would assign the order to one of them. We would see if Ola is ready with its riders to get the preferential treatment for that order because it's generated from Ola, and Ola is running another fleet business, not just a demand platform, it's a logistics company. So we'll wait for them to assign. If they are unable to assign, we'll assign it to one of our partners. And that network now runs at 99.5% accuracy, which is at par with any other hyperlocal delivery service. And once that goes through, the rider will reach the merchant, pick up the order from the merchant, deliver it back to Ola's customer from where they were looking at. So if you now think about it, what this is doing is that almost any media platform can start to become commerce ready. And if that starts to happen, then, and a big challenge with media coming, for instance, is that media doesn't translate to commerce, and thus, because of that distance, the monetization is poor. But if any media platform can become e-commerce ready, it's great for sellers because my cost of reaching out to demand goes down. It's great for the platforms because they have an additional way to monetize. And if you now think of it from an offline retail perspective, the same product is available at so many stores. Why is it on online the same product is available at only 2 stores? Almost in every category there will be 2 stores. But if you can democratize that, that can become something which is powerful. And again, India with its DPI initiative can do something which hasn't been done in any other context or any other country. I think I've taken enough more time and pause there. Do I have time for questions?
Normally, I don't need a mic. But yeah, in the early days when you started, so there are two sides to the business. There is a merchant acquisition and there is a consumer acquisition, right? So where were you putting the focus? And because the money spent is very different. Like to acquire a merchant, I'm assuming it's more like face-to-face kind of stuff. But I don't know, I'm just assuming. And to acquire a consumer, then the consumer is online.
Yeah.
Right. So one is offline, one is online.
See, any network or platform, it's a chicken and egg problem. You need enough of both sides to do the balance. The way we solved this, we got customers first. Now, the way we got customers first was that we asked users, and if you go back now, you might remember, we said, post your bill and we'll reward you for posting your bill. Largely, we were sourcing data. We were sourcing data around who's spending what, where, how, what frequency, what category, what specific products. That data told us who are the merchants that are relevant to our users. So we are incentivizing right off the bat, but those incentives were usable back only at our partners. In fact, to the point, 95% of our merchant acquisition happens without meeting the merchant. We would read the GST of the receipt. We would convert the GST into a phone number. We would WhatsApp on that phone number a link which will show the merchant he's ranked number 7 in his neighborhood. And 6 guys who he knows in his category are ahead of him. That's the simplest pitch, by the way, that you're ranked number 7, we can move you up. If you would work with us, you don't need to pay us anything upfront. And I already know this merchant is relevant because my users are going to this merchant. So that's how we got the flywheel spinning. Now we have enough national brands everywhere, so that's less of an issue. But that was the solution to the cold start problem with the network that we
Hi, Radhika Rajan here. What is your average basket value? And are you trying to raise it because you give the example of the white linen shirt and the shoes? So what is your average and what is the highest actually? So for instance, if you take a locality like Kalakoda, it's got a mix of air conditioner, spare parts, and very, very high-end boutique.
So our higher end would be, let's say, the 8 to 10,000 rupee range, which would largely come. Actually, I'm still, if I really take the top 1%, that will go up to even 1 lakh rupees. That happens in certain categories. Yes, it varies by category. That's the answer. So category, for example, fashion apparel would average around like 3 to 5,000 rupees. Categories like fine dining, for instance, would average at around 2,000 rupees or so. Categories like food, small mom and pop QSR, that might average around 250 rupees, but very high frequency. Overall, we blend at around 800 rupees. It's a very interesting question because if we were to work with only high ticket but low frequency category, we'd not be relevant to the consumer. The fact that we can mix it up, that have high frequency use cases, but then also have low frequency but high ticket use cases actually makes it work very nicely. Like a food, we'll need, let's say, 10 food transactions to make up for one fashion transaction. But they do come, and vice versa.
One last question. What do you guys do to make the retailer more engaged towards Magicpin? And the retention is again high from the retailer side. Obviously, consumer is getting enough value. So, is there anything other than money you guys do?
Yeah. So the obvious answer to that is if you give him business, he listens to you. Very basic, right? But that's not the complete answer. The value of respect, dignity, empathy is meaningful, and we also often forget because we just kind of run the numbers. But every time you do that, you spend time with merchants, they go out of their way. I'll give you one example on this. There's this, if you know Delhi, Lajpat Nagar is a very dense market in Delhi. There's a merchant called Narang Apparel there, Narang Garments there, who's been there for 40 years or so. He'll give Shopper Stop or any of the large format guys that run for their money on sales per square feet. His insight to us was that, hey, by the time someone gets to the counter, the guy's hungry. Right? It's been an hour at least in the store. If you give him a plate of chole bhature from the shop next door, he'd be willing to spend 3,000 rupees at that store. So can you put a signage at the cash counter that says, spend 3,000 rupees using Magicpin and get this chole bhature from the shop? So it's great for us. Right? Now that's a true partnership because we have an offer running from the chole bhature store. There'd be breakage and we can invest from our cap point of view as well. Now interestingly, the chole bhature guy has a similar problem. He can't increase his AOE, but he needs repeat. So if someone does 3 transactions at his store, we can give a movie ticket at that store. At movie ticket, we can go back and give a fine dine, we can come back to a bag. So literally, the whole market can be lifted up if you're truly seen as someone who's helping this market become online. And the amount of interest that exists in saying, I want to be online, I want to do whatever needs to be done to get my users is just immense. But if you come at it from your own take rate, and I'm saying this knowing that even in our audience there's enough and trust required around it, but the moment you come across in that way that you're here to stay, you're helping them do better, I think the entire equation.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is Magicpin's next 3-year strategy? Is it growing more locations, or is it within your locations you're in, growing the base?
So more the latter than the former, which is be more deep. We are saying what percent of our localities are we 50% deep. The value of an exchange, a network, any platform is how much liquidity it has. And this is a micro market by micro market. India as a micro market, that Lajpat Nagar market, for example, would be like $100 million every month of GMV. Just that market. So we can go to many more markets, but that is always secondary. It's always more profitable to go deep. So we are present in 15 cities. So our goal is next 3 years we keep going deeper in our present cities. We not look to expand in these cities.
What is Magicpin's USP or the barrier that another new competitor could just go on another new 15 locations?
It's so hard. I wish someone would come and do this. I think getting the entire piece right. On the merchant side, on the consumer side, it's just a lot of small things. We just need the doing it takes to get it right. Because if you come in and you try to burn your way into this, right, like it goes on and goes off. And you've seen in India all of these cycles. I'd say what took us the time to build it is actually now a moat for what we've been able to do.